What's going on, everyone, and welcome into Plizzolt's podcast, filled to the brim with glitchy analysis and freezing cold takes, so cold that they're boiling hot. In this episode, we're going to continue our college football preview and talk about the Baylor Bears. Let's get right into the stars. At quarterback, Daquan Finn, a transfer, is going to be the lightning bolt of this offense, a dual-threat quarterback that can sling the rock and put it on the ground. I'm really excited to see what he can do. He's been at Toledo for a few years, and now he's ready to light it up in the Power 4. I'm excited to see what he can do here. On defense, Steve Linton, defensive end. I think he's going to be a good pass rusher, good edge setter. He's going to be the guy on defense to watch. If Baylor's going to have any kind of increase in production, it's going to be Steve Linton's responsibility, basically. And then I don't really talk about special teams a lot, but Richard Reese, top 5 returner in the country, true freshman last year, really tore it up on kickoff returns. If they put him back there again this season, I think he's going to have another electric year. I think he was 5th in return yards per return, and he also had 2 kickoff return touchdowns, which is really impressive. So that's a guy to watch out for on special teams. Let's go ahead and get into a couple of storylines, key additions and losses, and then, of course, our record prediction. So Dave Aranda has been the coach here at Baylor now for quite a few years. He's been a lauded defensive coordinator, to say the least, around the country, Wisconsin, LSU, but now he's here at Baylor. And after a really good 12-2 season and a Big 12 championship game, they follow that up with a 6-7 year and a 3-9 season. So I think this year is winner take all. It is a make or break season. If Baylor can improve of a 3-9 season, Dave Aranda could probably keep his job. Specifically, I think he's got to keep the defensive side of the ball really stout. And if he can't do that, I think that the athletic director, the board there, is going to finally make a decision and decide to move on. So I got to see, I probably think at least a 6-6 season here from Baylor for Dave Aranda to keep his job. Now, go ahead and get into the losses and addition. The losses side of things, Blake Shapen, quarterback out of the transfer portal. He leaves and goes to Mississippi State. Your leading passer last year, and honestly, I don't think he was that bad of a talent. I mean, he's going to Mississippi State to be the starter, so he is a Power 4 Division I football starter at quarterback. I think that losing him or losing anyone like him is important to mention. But that's really all. Baylor has done a really good job of retaining its players. Now, in the addition side of things, you get Daquan Finn. Like I said, quarterback from Toledo. Really important that I emphasize the dual threat part of him. Baylor really has not had a lot of dual threat quarterbacks in its history. The one of note that you can really think of, Heisman winner, RG3. So I think that this could be a magical season for Baylor if everything clicks, but that's really rare and really hard to do. And then last but not least, I want to talk about Kendrick Simpkins, and that's Simpkins, not Simpson. Simpkins, a safety from the portal from Western Kentucky. This guy is a gadget guy, I think. I've seen him get sacks. I've seen him tackle, stop in the run game. He does really well in pass coverage. So this is kind of an all-around, do-everything kind of guy, and I think that's an important piece for Dave Aranda to use on this defense. Now let's talk about a couple more storylines before we get into our record prediction. There is a new offensive coordinator in town, Jake Spatvital, I believe is how you pronounce that. But he was the offensive coordinator at Cal last year, and they saw quite an increase in production over just one season. They went from 24 points per game to 30 points per game, 340 yards per game to 390, and they played some better teams, in my opinion, in this last season for Cal. So he's been around guys like Johnny Manziel, Geno Smith, Brandon Whedon, Will Greer. Now, to me, those are more traditional pocket passer guys outside of Johnny Manziel, of course, but I do think that having a dual threat quarterback mix in with a more pocket passing offensive mind, that could be interesting. I want to see what happens here. Obviously, Baylor's going to have magical offensive production this year if they want to win some games. And to be honest, Jake Spatvital, even though this is his first year on the job. His job is on the line because if they don't win games, the entire coaching staff is going to be gone. Last but not least, I want to talk about the fact that Baylor has returned 19 of 21 or 22 starters, which I think is extremely impressive given the modern age of the transfer portal and players just going to the NFL early and whatnot. I mean, obviously Baylor didn't have a top tier class last year, but 19 starters returning. Obviously, there's going to be some improvement there. So I'm a big fan of that. Dave Aranda, not a bad job there. I mean, if he can get these starters to actually improve and move up in the game, Baylor could have a pretty good season. But with all that being said, let's get into our record prediction. So for Baylor, we're getting them started off early with an easy win versus Tarleton State. Then they go at Utah. And something that I want to point out here, they scheduled this Utah home and home series before they joined before they joined the Big 12 and left the Pac-12. They now have 10 conference games on their schedule, which to me is brutal. 10 conference. I don't know. The Utah game will not count as a conference game, I don't believe, but they're in the conference. So that's 10 teams in their conference on their schedule. That is disgustingly brutal for Baylor. So let's go ahead and keep going. At Utah, that's a loss. Come back, you host Air Force, you get your rebound, 2-1. At Colorado, I think that's a really tough game, and I don't think Baylor's defense is up to the task yet, so I'm going to give you a loss there. Hosting BYU, that is a win, but then 3 straight losses at Iowa State, at Texas Tech, and then hosting Oklahoma State. To me, Baylor is just not where most Big 12 teams are at right now. Yes, they've returned all these starters, but to me, they're still kind of in rebuild mode, especially after a 3-9 year. So I give you 3 straight losses there. Hosting TCU, I think that could be a win. I think TCU kind of is lulling in their part of the schedule here. And then at West Virginia, that is a loss. It is really tough to go into Morgantown and get a win. I think that's a loss for Baylor. At Houston, that is a win. Houston has one of the worst programs in the Big 12. That's an easy win in my opinion. And then hosting Kansas, I think that's an L. I love Jalen Daniels. I think that he's one of the most talented quarterbacks in the country, and I think he's going to be able to outduel Daquan Finn. So 5-7, that is an improvement off of 3-9, but in my opinion, probably not enough to keep Dave Aranda's job. Baylor's going to be in a full rebuild next year. All those starters that have been returning, they're going to be gone probably in the portal and whatnot. So 5-7 for Baylor. That's going to do it for this preview. Thanks all for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.